Yeah, here we go. All righty. Well, thank you guys for coming. Welcome to our Kick Sugar's Butt workshop. I think a lot of us probably after the holidays, we've all had lots of sweet treats, lots of foods, lots of perhaps adult bevies, that we might need to address and possibly have a few sugar cravings. I know a few people do. So I know all of you guys, there are a few people that I guess will be watching the video, the replay after. So great to have you here, and we might just sort of get started. So tonight we are going to cover a lot. So I am going to talk a bit. I'm going to try and make it as interactive as possible. I want to give you guys as much information as I can. And my cats are being very annoying in the background, just so the people watching the replay, this is what's going on in the background for me. So if that's a little distracting, sorry. So at the end, there will be time for questions, but feel free to pop your questions. There they go in the chat. I can try and answer things as we go. I do want this to be interactive so that you're not just listening to me go blah, blah, blah the whole time. So what we're going to cover is, first of all, what is so bad about sugar anyway? So you're all here or listening to the replay. You probably have an understanding that maybe too much sugar in your diet isn't such a good thing. But what is it that makes it bad? Why is it something that we actually want to limit? So we're really going to dive into that. We're going to talk about how to find hidden sugars. You might be really surprised at some of the common pantry items that have a lot of hidden sugars in them. So I'll show you how to look for those. We're going to look at what happens to your body and to your brain when you feed it too much sugar, and why sometimes we feel like we're addicted to sugar. And let me tell you, it is a thing. Sometimes it is a true addiction, and we'll talk about why that is. We're also going to have a look at artificial sweeteners, because there can be a lot of confusion about, is that better for you or not? We're going to look at some healthier sugar alternatives. I'll help you understand which ones may be better for you and which ones you might want to avoid. We're going to get into some practical ways to actually kick sugar. So I'm going to give you a bunch of tips. So to help you feel better, naturally lose weight, stop those sugar cravings. Right at the end, we're going to take a deep dive into cravings. And for anybody that does have cravings, whether it's for sugar, carb, or foods in general, how we can reduce those cravings so that you're not at their mercy, so you can take control back. So before I go any further, I will tell you a little bit about myself. Some of you already know me fairly well, but like all of you, I am on the go all the time. I have a long-term, very supportive hubby of 32 years. I've got a German Shepherd puppy who I'm surprised he's not in here. Two maniac cats who you've already met. I run two businesses. So I have my own business, my Kickstart Your Wellness business. That's my health business. I'm a certified nutrition health coach. I'm a doTERRA essential oils educator and overall foodie. So I had a food business in my past. That will probably come into being in the future. Plus, I also manage a pay by the hour offshore marketing company called On Demand Marketing Team. So my life is never dull. So I totally understand the busy life that we all lead. The trick is actually just in finding the right balance. So I didn't always have the right balance. And you might think, even with managing two companies, plus a personal life and social life, how do I find balance? Through a lot of different healthy lifestyle habits is the answer. But in the past, I was actually a diagnosed workaholic. And as you can imagine, that really impacted my health. And one of the things that I suffered from was high blood pressure. My weight kind of went through the roof. I had no immune system whatsoever. It was absolutely tanked. And I literally turned to sugar and caffeine. I used to have all of my meetings in a coffee shop, like with vendors and suppliers and things. I like very strong sugar, very strong coffee. And I would, of course, have something sweet with it because I wanted energy. So I ended up on what's called the sugar roller coaster, which we are going to talk about in a little bit of detail. And of course, at some point, my body basically hit rock bottom, said enough's enough, made me actually make some changes. And that's when I discovered the power of plants. So nutrition, so foods that we eat, essential oils, which are basically pure plant, And they're both Mother Nature's remedies. So I encourage people to go low tox to get back to basics. So I cleaned up my life, and it took a few years. It's not something that just happened instantly. And what do you know? I lost weight. My blood pressure went totally back to normal. I'm healthier now than I've ever been. And, touch wood, I can't remember the last time I was actually sick. I don't have the allergies I used to have. I'm pretty healthy. So I've been on my own journey of natural healing, and that's why I became a certified health coach, so that I could help you or other people do the same thing. So these days I offer a range of programs, from individual coaching through to group programs, essential oil workshops, free webinars online, a whole bunch of different things. So I'll tell you about a few of those in a little while. But I say to people, just think of me kind of like your wellness planner, instead of a wedding planner. I show you how to use nutrition and healthy lifestyle habits to improve your gut health and improve your overall well-being. And one saying that you'll hear me say, if you come to a few things, if your gut's not happy, then the rest of you is not going to be either. So that's something I really focus on. So enough about me. Let's talk about sugar. So what is sugar? Well, basically it's a carbohydrate. And it's the general name that we use to cover off any sweet tasting carbs. And it's found in all carbohydrate foods. So for example, we have fructose in fruit, so that's fruit sugar. We have lactose in milk. We have maltose in grains. And of course, then we have refined sugars, which we'll talk about. And your body will break down all carbohydrate foods into glucose. And our cells then use that glucose to make energy. So that's kind of how our body is run. So we absolutely need carbs. Now, just to be clear, this workshop is not about no carb. We're not going to start counting the number of carbs or sugars that we find in our veggies. What we do want to do, though, is I'm going to teach you to focus on the quality of the sugar that you're eating. You want to limit the refined sugars, the processed sugars, all the hidden sugars that we're going to talk about. And you want to start reducing those, because that really is the first step in kicking sugar. So what is bad sugar, the sugar that you really want to be avoiding? When you think about sugar, most of us think about white table sugar. You see the jars, most even at cafes these days, a lot of cafes still only have white sugar available. That type of sugar is the refined sugar that's made from sugarcane or the sugar beet plant. So what happens when sugar manufacturers produce that refined sugar is that they actually strip out all the vitamins and minerals from the plant. So the plant itself is probably healthy enough in its own right. And they create a white crystalline powder. And that is often genetically modified if the producer is using GMO farming methods, which a lot are these days. Or it may be covered in unsafe herbicides and pesticides. So there's some other risk aside from just the processing. That is the kind of sugar that we globally, as the human race, are eating far too much of. So first interactive bit, pop into the chat. What foods can you guys think of that are full of refined sugar, so added sugars? I did say this was going to be interactive, right? Yeah. Ice cream, chocolate. Yep. Candy, absolutely. Of course. Processed fruit juice, yep. Cakes, sauces, yep. Spot on. Cereals, pre-made meals, yogurts. Yogurts are a huge one for having lots of added sugars in them. Breads, gluten-free products. Most gluten-free products are full of added sugar. So even if you're trying to reduce your gluten, then you're topping your body up with all this added sugar. Dressings, soups, the list goes on. It's pretty scary. These days, sugar is hidden pretty much everywhere. It's also in things like toothpaste and rice bowls, or Rice Krispies, as we call them in the US. Things you wouldn't think of. I mean, if you're buying plain rice bubbles, why would you need sugar in that? So basically, it's a filler that they add to a lot of foods. And here's a fun fact for you. You may recognize some of these, you may not. Sugar has a lot of different names. Now, obviously, I'm not going to read off all of this, but basically, there's a couple on here I might mention. Dehydrated cane juice is basically raw cane sugar. So that's not to say that these are all super bad, most are, but it's just to let you know all the different names that you might see on ingredients. Invert sugar, sorbitol, maltitol, xylitol, anything with a TOL at the end, you probably want to avoid. Sucanat, high fructose corn syrup. We're going to talk about that one in a little while. That's one you absolutely want to steer clear of. So yeah, so you can see, and that's only a few. Sugar has so many different names, and the manufacturers get very clever about how they hide sugar, you know, in your foods. So let's have a look at an example. Would you guys say, you can just probably show your hands, would you guys say that this is healthy or not? Vitamin water.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, on the face of it, you would think that something that's called vitamin water sounds healthy. Yeah. So let's just have a look at it. So theoretically, it should be water and vitamins, and we need both of those things. How many teaspoons of sugar is in this one? And I've put the nutrition label up here. Not to mention, you know, it could have synthetic ingredients, flavorings, things like that. So if we look at the nutrition panel, you might think, oh, it's not too bad. It's got 4.3 grams of sugar, which is, just for your reference, just over a teaspoon of sugar. 1 teaspoon is 4 grams. So, you know, I mean, you might think, oh yeah, that's not too bad, 1 teaspoon of sugar. But have a look at the serving size. So yeah, so it is 1 teaspoon of sugar, but have a look at the serving size. That's only for 100 ml. Your average bottle, and this one in particular, is 500 ml. So most of us are not going to drink like 1/5 of the bottle, because that's only going to be a very small amount. Most of us would actually drink half or the whole bottle. So if we were to drink the entire bottle, which would be easy enough to do, that's actually a whopping 21.5 grams of sugar in that one little bottle. Wow. So to put that in perspective, that's about 5.5 teaspoons of sugar just in this one drink, which is just crazy, right? And to then add a bit more perspective, if we look at our recommended daily intake of sugar for men and women, for women, it's less than 25 grams, and for men, it's less than 36 grams. So when you look at in this one bottle that you've got almost your entire intake for a female for the day, that's just absolutely nuts. And it's something that you just don't realize, because you look, nutrition labels can be really misleading. If you're not looking at the actual, they'll all have 100 mils on it or 100 grams, because that's the standard sizing. But you need to have a look at what your actual serving size is going to be. How much of it are you going to have? So yeah, so this is absolutely not healthy. I can say categorically. Let's talk about the really bad sugars. So high fructose corn syrup, this is honestly, this is the worst. It used to be found in pretty much every soft drink, any processed foods. These days they have started reducing it, which is great. In the US, it's still in a bunch of things. Here, it's not as prevalent. But the thing is, if it's not in the soft drink these days, then chances are the soft drink actually has chemically derived artificial sweeteners in it. Very few soft drinks have real sugar in them. And I would always tell people, if you have to have something like that, always go for real sugar. The artificial sweeteners, and we will talk about this a little bit more, they cause a whole bunch of other issues because your body doesn't really know how to process them. So one of the key takeaways from today, if anybody does drink a lot of sweet drinks or soft drinks or vitamin waters, make a pledge to yourself to stop that, or at least reduce your intake. I promise you that will change your life and greatly improve your health. And the thing with high fructose corn syrup is that it's actually processed differently in your liver from other sugars. It can lead to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is, you know, can cause lots of issues. It can lead to an increase in triglycerides and cholesterol levels, and not the good kinds of cholesterol. It can increase, hey, Steph, it can increase intestinal permeability, things like leaky gut. can lead to inflammation, allergies, IBS, autoimmune diseases. All of these things are linked with your gut. High fructose corn syrup drives obesity like nothing else. So you really want to avoid it like the plague. So if nothing else, make sure that whatever products you are using do not have high fructose corn syrup in it. So speaking, I just mentioned the plague. Let's take a little trip back in time. All right, we as humans are not designed to be this sweet. So our genes, our ancestors, our whole physiology evolved in a naturally low sugar world. So we ate lots of complex carbs, things like root veggies, sweet potatoes, pumpkin, well, pumpkin's not a root veg, but, carrots, things like that. And we ate a lot of fats and proteins. So anthropologists suggest that our average caveman ancestor probably had about 20 teaspoons of sugar in a year, an entire year. So you think about that one vitamin water had 21 and a half grams of sugar in that, which is about 5.5 teaspoons. That's like almost, a quarter of your intake in one drink, not to mention a whole year. So in modern times, the average is probably around 17 teaspoons a day for most people living a normal Western diet. Now that is kind of conservative if we look in the US, and Australia's following, very sadly. There's been a lot of studies in the US, particularly on teens, and some of those teenagers can consume more than 40 teaspoons of sugar in a day. So when you look at the amount of sugar that would be, sweet drinks, the big gulps that, is so prevalent in the US, is one of the reasons why I became a nutrition health coach, because of some of these challenges that they had over there. Our bodies are literally not designed to cope with that much carbohydrate, because remember, sugar is carb. So we all have a hormone called insulin, and I'm sure everybody's heard of it. We all associate it with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and we know that, that's the hormone that's involved with those diseases. But most people understand that insulin does have something to do with the sugar balance in our blood, and we're going to talk a bit about sugar balance. So insulin itself was designed in our bodies to store away our extra glucose. So any extra sugar that we have in our diet as fat. And this was so that in times of plenty, when there was lots of food around, we would store that away, so that that extra energy, that we had that as fat for when winter came or when food was scarce. So back in the day, in the summer months, we might have had lots of food available to us. In the winter, we might have had to go for long, long walks, weeks at a time, hunting for food, foraging, looking for food. So insulin allowed our bodies to actually store fat reserves that we could then pull on, as we needed to survive. So insulin is our fat storage hormone. That is its job. And we all today, we have lots of insulin in our bodies. So, all right, let's jump back to the future now. So here we are today. We've got generally 24/7 supermarkets, sugar-laden shelves. There's no winter, there's no famine, well, not in Australia anyway. There's no long hikes to find food or calorie-burning mammoth hunts. And yet, we still basically are the same as our ancestors. We are still well designed to store excess sugar as fat. So on top of that, we also have a far more sedentary lifestyle. We're not out there, going on long walks to find food. We're also more chronically stressed than ever before, which adds to our challenges. So we don't sleep enough. We tend to eat too much, and all of this is a recipe for high blood sugar, high insulin, and therefore a lot of fat storage. So let's have a look at exactly what sugar does to your brain and to your body. So let me ask you this. Imagine watering your garden, your plants, with Coca-Cola, instead of with water. How well do you think that your plants would actually do? Do you think they would survive? What if you fed your cat or your pups lollies, sweets, candy, or bickies, cookies, cake, foods that they are not biologically supposed to eat? Well, isn't it interesting? You wouldn't, right? Like none of us would do that. But isn't it interesting that we don't think twice when we actually eat the stuff? And our bodies are not designed to eat what we eat. So, as you can see from this slide, having foods that are really high in sugar all the time, like that ice donut that she's got there, that is going to affect so many different systems in your body. And we'll go through a few of these in more detail. So one thing a lot of people don't realize is that sugar actually depletes your body of precious nutrients. So remember when I spoke about how refined sugar is actually produced? They take the sugar cane, the sugar beet plant, and in the processing, they strip out all of the vitamins and minerals and the fiber. So what happens if we then eat a lot of sugar in our diet? Our body has to actually pull on its own reserves of vitamins and minerals and nutrients to actually even process that sugar that we're putting into our body. So what happens is that we become very depleted. And when that happens and we're in a nutritionally depleted state, we get cravings, right? So your body is desperate to get more food in. It's looking for those vitamins and minerals. Your body's desperate for energy. So we tend to reach for those sugar-laden foods, which becomes a really vicious cycle. So in my practice and to my clients, I do recommend supplementation for a number of different reasons. I use doTERRA supplements because they're made from pure whole foods. There are, a number of different providers out there of supplements. Sometimes it may be specific things that somebody needs, whatever I feel is right for you, so that we can restore the body basically back to your nutrient balance. My key goal is to get everybody's gut health improved, get them off the sugar, and basically just improve overall diet and lifestyle habits. But if that wasn't bad enough, sugar impacts a whole bunch of other things. So it weakens your immune system. So did you know, remember I spoke about back in the day when I was a corporate workaholic, my immune system was completely tanked for a number of different reasons. But did you know sugar actually suppresses your white blood cells for up to 5 hours? So white blood cells are, what helps you prevent things at your immune system, preventing threats basically to your body. It also leads to more chronic infections and conditions such as autoimmune disease. Sugar contributes a lot to inflammation, particularly in the gut. It damages your blood vessel walls, and that can lead to cardiovascular disease. So there's a big linkage between sugar and cardiovascular issues. And let's ask a question. Does anybody here get hangry if you haven't eaten? Any of you guys? Yep, Helen. I'm sure a lot of us do. Yeah, I certainly do. Common symptoms of being hangry can be fatigue, lack of concentration, mood swings, shaking, sweating, but actually being grumpy is probably the most common thing. And that can just all be signs of blood sugar irregularities. It's basically your blood sugar is not balanced. There are some people where, like intermittent fasting works for them. For me, I need to eat every 3 or 4 hours just to sort of keep my energy levels stable. Now, type 2 diabetes, which is so common these days, basically our receptors no longer respond to the insulin produced in the pancreas, and our cells are actually less able to get energy from the food that we eat. So we end up eating more, which is really scary. Sugar messes with our serotonin levels. So serotonin is basically known as your happy hormone. About 95% of your serotonin is actually produced in your gut. So imagine if your gut's already a bit out of balance and you're throwing lots of sugar at it, you're actually reducing your happy hormones. That can lead quite easily to depression. And of course, sugar is a direct contributor to weight gain. So remember those cavemen and insulin. Sugar triggers the release of insulin, which is somebody want to yell it out? You better remember what insulin is. give you a hint. It's our fat storage hormone. So if we have a fat storage hormone, then of course that's going to lead to weight gain. But wait, there's still more. We had, for us poor women, a major European study found that women with high blood sugar levels are actually at an increased risk of developing cancers of the pancreas, skin, uterus, urinary tract. And high blood sugar was also linked to breast cancer for women under 49. Given how prevalent the big C is these days, I think we certainly don't want to do anything to actually increase our risk factors as women. So that's some of the things that the sugar just does to your body. What about its effect on your brain? So anybody here ever feel like you're addicted to sugar either now or in the past? Yeah. So, sometimes those cravings are like, oh, I just need something sweet. Or you might not even realize that it's a craving, but you just know that you need more energy and you go to grab something. Well, you bet you are actually addicted to sugar. So, sugar itself is actually, and this is refined sugars we're talking about, not fruit sugars. Sugar is actually around 8 times more addictive than cocaine. There's been lots of studies done on rats because they actually are the closest things to us, in terms of testing the reactions. Rats will actually turn their nose up at illicit drugs, but they will make a beeline straight for sugar. It works on the same part of in the brain as addiction. So what happens is that when we eat lots of foods that contain sugar, a massive amount of dopamine is released in our brain's reward center. Now, dopamine is our pleasure neurotransmitter. So it gives us powerful feelings of pleasure, relaxation. And so obviously we are geared to want more of those feelings. But what happens if we keep eating a lot of sugar, our brain downregulates the number of dopamine receptors. And so in order for us to get that beautiful feeling of pleasure that we get from that food, we actually have to eat even more sugar to get that same hit, just like you would with a drug addiction. So over time, you end up having to eat more and more and more because you want that good feeling. So cravings for sweet stuff can sometimes come from this deficiency of dopamine. And some of the symptoms of low dopamine can be things like fatigue, lack of concentration, lack of focus, low motivation, anxiety, and mood swings. Very similar to some of those symptoms we actually talked about before. So let's talk about the blood sugar roller coaster. This is not a fun roller coaster to be on. What happens if you look down at the bottom left with the little pink arrow? It kind of starts like this. Let's say we eat a simple carb, which is a high sugar food. Now that could be a pink donut. It could be just a piece of white bread. We get a massive rise of blood sugar into our blood. We get a huge spike, which you can see up the top of the roller coaster. Now, our brain uses about 50% of our glucose at any one point in time. So it's constantly monitoring the level of sugar, the level of glucose in our blood. And so if we get any big rise or a dramatic fall, our brain thinks it's an emergency because that's just the way we're geared. It goes into panic mode. So say we've eaten that sugar, our blood sugar level goes up really high. The brain is alerted. It sends alarm signals to our pancreas, telling it to create or secrete even more insulin into our bloodstream. So what's insulin? Does anybody remember? What does it do? It's our fat storage hormone. You guys, if nothing else, will remember that at the end. So insulin basically goes into our body, gets all of that sugar, takes it to the cells where it will later be turned into energy, or if there's a lot of excess sugar, it actually gets stored away as fat. What happens is we've become really good at sending out lots of insulin. So I don't know about you guys. I was brought up in the US. I was brought up on, white bread, candy, cakes, all the simple carbs, lots of sugar. And sometimes our pancreas overcompensates. So it can send out too much sugar. So rather than our blood sugar going back to just a happy normal level, maybe we get a flood of insulin comes out and then it drops our sugar levels low. So they actually go too low. And then bang, we're down at the bottom of this roller coaster. So you can see where that dip is. And I can tell you, we don't feel very good when we're down there. We are on a sugar low. So I'm sure we've all experienced that. You have some kind of sugar food, and then half an hour later, here you are, and you're feeling just completely flat. And so what we do is we crave more sugar and possibly caffeine. We just want an instant pick-me-up. So as far as our body goes, chemically, it's an emergency situation. It needs energy. It wants something sweet and fast. So then we go and we pick up another pink donut or, you know, a piece of white bread, whatever we're going to have. And again, up we go on the roller coaster. So you can see that this is actually a really nasty cycle for our bodies to get into. It's actually really hard for your body. And it's really difficult to get off of this roller coaster once you're kind of, you know, in this cycle. Sugar is also stressful. So that blood sugar roller coaster actually causes huge stress on your body. So it causes chemical stress, it causes biological stress, both on your body and your brain. Effectively, it makes your body feel like it's running from a woolly mammoth all the time or from a tiger. So it puts you in a state of fight and flight, which most of us are probably already in with chronic stress levels. So it just exacerbates that. And one thing I will say that people don't realize is constant stress is very aging to the brain and to the body, and of course contributes a lot to disease. So one thing we all want to aspire to do is we want to get off of the sugar roller coaster and we want to have healthy blood sugar regulation. And honestly, this is the key to so many different health conditions, and to having healthy, greater health in general. I mean, you can take all the supplements in the world, but if you are not eating a good, healthy diet, you're still going to get onto this roller coaster. In reality, kicking sugar is the key basically to, you know, it's one of the key factors to all of these things. And anybody that's done my programs will know that, you know, these are all a lot of the things that we're looking to balance out. So let's talk quickly about artificial sweeteners. They're found in diet foods, you know, like soft drinks, yogurts, etc. So saccharin, aspartame, sucralose, which is things like Splenda and Equal. Are these things better for you or not? Well, they were created, yes, to be better than sugar. However, there's a lot of research that's been done, and it's actually shown that they increase your blood sugar because your body still views it as a sweet food. They contribute to obesity. They increase your risk for type 2 diabetes and your high blood pressure over time. So that's everything that they were supposed to be helping us avoid. Oh, and by the way, they can also be carcinogenic. So there's plenty of evidence out there to say that artificial sweeteners really are not the best solution for us. But what about healthy sugars? Things like raw honey, maple syrup, agave, dates, things like that. These are all fruit sugars, so they're naturally plant-based. You find them in the health food store, they must be okay, right? Well, probably, as they say, everything in moderation, right? So if you have a small amount of honey or raw maple syrup, pure maple syrup in your oats, the occasional slice or protein bowls that are made from dates, yeah, your body can manage that. It's designed to actually process plant sugars. One of these that I would steer clear of, though, is agave. There was a big trend, you know, not that long ago for agave. Yeah, coconut sugar is good. I use a lot of coconut sugar. Actually has some of the trace vitamins and minerals that get stripped out of white sugar. But I would steer clear of agave. It actually is higher in fructose than table sugar. It's higher in calories because of that. And it can actually cause all sorts of adverse impacts they're starting to discover. So yeah, if you're going to use anything, raw honey, pure maple sugar, and also, you know, just natural dates as sweeteners. So yeah, mostly they're going to be okay. The only thing is just be aware they are still sugar, right? So your body, you will still get a blood sugar spike, and it depends on which one that you're having. Some of them cause more than others. And so it can still keep you on that roller coaster, which is one of the reasons why we actually remove sugars altogether when we're trying to actually reset ourselves. Stevia, I get asked about stevia monk fruit. So stevia actually is natural. It comes from the leaf of a plant. In fact, you can actually grow it yourself. I was growing stevia for ages. It kind of like took over up here in Queensland. It grows really well. It doesn't have any carbs, calories, and so it doesn't affect our insulin levels. So if you really do need some kind of sweetener, this could be a really good choice. And it is one of the sweeteners that I do allow my participants to have in my programs. The only thing is, here in Australia, you'll probably need to order pure stevia online from an online health food store. We do have it here. If you go to Woolies and Coles, they're almost always mixed with erythritol. Erythritol is natural, but it's really not that great for the body. It can cause a lot of digestive issues, and long-term consumption of it has been linked with an increased risk of heart-related conditions. So probably not worth doing. Stevia, just a point to note for anybody that might be on meds to actually lower your blood pressure. Stevia can actually help lower your blood pressure naturally. So if somebody was on medications to lower that, I'll probably do a check-in with the doctor just to keep an eye on it, you know, if you start having stevia. All right, I'm going to go through quickly 7 tips on how to kick sugar, and we'll talk about cravings in particular at the end of this. I'm sure that you probably all know all these tips I'm going to give you, but how many of us are actually doing them? So there's a big difference between knowing what we should be doing or could be doing and actually doing them. So that comes down to just reinforcing good habits, and of course some accountability helps as well. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to put some of these, or all of these ideally, into action every day. So tip number 1 is hydration. Yeah, we all know that we should drink more water, but it is a struggle to do. You know, we're in busy lives. You can sit at your desk if you're at a desk job. You might be sitting there for a few hours and all of a sudden realize, oh, I haven't had any water for the last however long. So how do we make it easier to get more hydration? There's a number of different ways. I don't know if you guys have got any tips that you use to make sure to remind you. Pop them in the chat because then I can share them later. A couple of mine, you know, will have a big liter water bottle to remind me to actually refill my glass. You can set a reminder on your phone. A cool one that somebody else taught me is if you have like a normal size water bottle, if you want to drink, say 1.5 liters a day or 2 liters a day, and your bottle's say 500 mils, get, you know, your little hair elastic bands, you know, that you use for your ponytails. Put however many bands by 500. So if I wanted to drink 2 liters a day, that would be 4 elastic bands. So 4 times 500. I would actually put those bands around the top of my water bottle. And as I drink a full bottle, I take a band off as I refill it. So it's a very good visual cue to actually remind you to have water. And if anybody else has got tips, pop them in the chat, like I said. A question I get asked, what if I don't like water? Which is a great question, actually. I never used to like water, like it was just boring, hence having, you know, caffeinated and sugary drinks. So these days I use doTERRA oils. So I will make sparkling water or flat. I'll add, you know, 1 to 2 drops to it. It basically adds flavor, so it's not so boring anymore, but I'm also getting health benefits and there's no sugar. So now I do drink plenty of water. So my all-time favorites, in case anybody wants some ideas, lemon, can't go past lemon, grapefruit, green mandarin are some of my faves. And the beauty with citrus, whether it's fresh or an oil, is that it also helps the body detoxify naturally, which is something that we definitely need to promote. So you can, of course, you can put fresh mint in your water. You could put fruit. Just be a little careful with putting loads of sweet fruits like strawberries, watermelon, because remember, you are trying to reduce your sugar content. And that can actually build up over time. If you're putting fresh citrus like lemon slices, grapefruit slices, one of the things for a lot of people, myself included, which is why I don't do it anymore, the acidity from citrus fruit actually can cause quite a lot of tooth sensitivity. So for me, if I had, fresh lemon in my water like all day, my teeth would literally hurt that night to eat. So with the essential oils, there's actually no acidity. So you get the flavor, but not the acidity. So if anybody's got questions about that, they can reach out to me after. I can send some info. The thing is, every single chemical reaction in our body requires water, right? We are made up predominantly of water. We need water. So you might think that you're okay not having a lot of water, you're still functioning. Your body will absolutely be struggling and it won't be operating as well as what it could or should be. My second tip is to satisfy your body with sweet plants, sweet foods. So your tongue has sweet taste buds that can be satisfied naturally with sweet foods. Anybody that's done one of my programs, a few of you have, knows that all the foods on the screen here are included in my meal plans because they naturally satisfy sweet cravings. Licorice tea is another great option, which we had today. So the other thing I would say, take the time to chew complex carbs slowly. It actually helps to break down the glucose bonds in complex carbs, and the food will naturally become sweeter. So that will also help kick off your digestive process and takes a lot off your gut as well. Sleep. If you're always tired, sleep is so important for our body to do its healing processes. If you're always tired, your body's going to obviously look for instant energy, and the quickest way would be sugar or caffeine. So the average quality sleep time that you should get, so that's restful sleep, meaning that you wake up feeling rested and you're ready to just bounce out of bed and get started with your day. On average, they recommend 6 to 8 hours. So if you're not getting that, book in a free chat and we can talk about sleep routines and things. That's a topic of a whole nother webinar. Protein. Now this one is so important. So all my clients know that I always recommend having a protein at every meal. So it's important to have, anytime you're eating something, that it's balanced with fats, carbs, and protein. That includes snacks. So protein is really important for balancing your blood sugar levels. It slows the absorption of the glucose so that we don't get that huge spike in the roller coaster. And that means that we have sustained energy rather than doing this. So it's one of the best ways to start getting off that roller coaster. And when we're talking about protein, that means plant or animal protein. So things like, for plant, tofu, edamame, nuts and seeds. For legumes, lentils, things like that. Brown rice, quinoa are good sources. And then for animals, of course, we have any range of meats. I do recommend most people that you have mostly seafood, white meats. Eggs are, a superfood in my book, and less of the red meat. It's very hard for your body to process. And the last thing I might just touch on about protein is portion sizes, because we in general as a culture, we tend to have way too much just in terms of our portions. So it is possible to have too much of a good thing. So a good rule of thumb is palm size for a meal-based meat. So if you're having, a steak or a piece of chicken or fish, usually about that much, it's about 100, 125 grams. And for a snack, about 3 fingers worth, if that. So you want to actually reduce it depending on your meal size. Of course, we want to, I talked about low fat and diet things before. Fats have been given such a bad rap. We've been conditioned to eat low fat and diet foods. But the thing is they're loaded with added sugars, whether they're artificial or real. And they're also full of synthetic things. And guess what? That sugar turns into fat. So it's actually healthier to have full fat. I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it is actually healthier to have full fat products. Being active, physical activity is so important. It helps us reduce stress. It burns up our glucose levels, helps us reduce our insulin levels. So basically helps us balance that roller coaster. It also produces endorphins, serotonin, so it can actually make us feel happier. When you don't get enough, your body can start to look for other ways to blow off steam, and that could be like emotional eating or binging on sugar. And my last tip is really about healthy habits. So if you're trying to break a habit, like i.e. eating lots of sweet stuff, it does take about 21 days, they say, to break a habit, and about 28, 30 days to embed a new habit, can take less or more. So if you're in the habit of having a sweet treat after your meal, which is a habit that we kind of got into over Christmas, the first thing is really you want to take a step back and consider why you want that in the first place. Was it simply a ritual or a habit that you got into? You know, you just got into having, like, I was brought up, we had three-course meals. We always had dessert after dinner. Is it because your dinner wasn't satisfying enough? You know, maybe you had something super healthy and then your body or your brain was like, oh yeah, I really want something sweet now. Is it because you're lonely or perhaps bored? So emotional eating. Think of other things that you could do that will give you the same satisfaction level, those endorphins, the serotonin, but not have you reaching for sugar. So things like having a bath, going for a walk, you know, movement, doing some gentle yoga or meditation, nothing too strenuous, too close to bed, stretching, or having a cup of peppermint or licorice tea. That will absolutely, fennel, licorice, peppermint, they'll all satisfy a food craving. All right, cravings. Let's talk about cravings. What are some of your biggest cravings when it comes to sugar? Just pop it in the chat really quick. And also pop in there, what time of day do you get those cravings normally? Is there a habit or a trend? Yep, chocolate evening. Yep, 3 to 4 p.m. Yeah, that mid-afternoon slump. That's very common if we're not eating balanced meals throughout the day or balancing our foods out. Yep, chocolate, 3 p.m. So chocolate in itself, just as a side thing, chocolate, if you're having chocolate, make sure it's dark chocolate, 70% or more, and get good quality. No artificial sweeteners in that. Make sure you get as good a quality as you can. Dark chocolate actually has a lot of health benefits. But clearly, if you're craving it mid-afternoon, that means your body's wanting energy, which means that you probably are on that roller coaster. I would suggest having a glass of water first, see whether or not that actually kicks that craving, because it could be that you're actually a bit dehydrated. And of course, you know, if it's more related to you're bored, a lot of times, a lot of people will reach for that mid-afternoon snack because they need a break from their desk, they need a break from work. Rather than going to the fridge and eating something, why not go for a quick walk? Could be a walk around the house, could be around the block, could be around the school, wherever you are. So I think the only other thing I want to say relating to cravings is a lot of people actually feel guilty, ashamed, have a lot of negative self-talk. That's because food and emotions are linked. So if we give in and eat whatever it is that, you know, we want to eat, we shouldn't cane ourselves for that. We want to make sure that we talk kindly to ourselves and then put a plan in place. So there's a bunch of things. I'm going to run through these really quickly because I'm conscious that I'm probably getting close to time. There's a bunch of things that actually absolutely don't work when it comes to cravings. Willpower is one. We use our willpower on so many other things that by the time the afternoon comes around, we don't basically have any willpower left. It's pretty simplistic. Deprivation absolutely doesn't work. Being super strict, depriving ourselves, it just makes us want it even more, right? So anytime you tell yourself, I can't have something, you absolutely want it even more, especially if you're not giving yourself a substitute in place of that. So if you're already addicted to sugar, or maybe you're an emotional eater and you've got problems with dopamine, remember that's that pleasure transmitter, you're fighting against your own brain. You are never going to win in that situation. So deprivation is not a good plan. And tough love doesn't work either. You know, I've met a lot of people, they punish themselves for being weak, you know, the negative self-talk. They might have some sugar or some sort of treat, and then they'll go super hard at the gym to compensate for that. That becomes a cycle in itself. And worse, I have had some clients that have actually been like, okay, I'm going to have, you know, my sweet treat or alcohol or whatever their thing was, and then I'm going to skip a meal, because that way I'm still balancing out my calories. And that's an awful thing to do, because then we're not giving our body enough nutrients, and we absolutely will get onto that sugar roller coaster. So what does work? Well, basically, cravings are messengers. They're telling us that we need something. If you're not happy in an area of your life, a lot of times it can be easier to reach for sugar. It's basically called self-medicating for food. And regardless of how we got into that sugar roller coaster, it's really important that once you are kind of experiencing any kind of cravings, that you ask yourself, what is it that you really want? Usually it's an emotion, it's your body seeking balance. So your body's always going to look for balance or homeostasis, and it will go for the path of least resistance. The more you ignore a craving, the stronger it's going to become. So you basically need to explore what that craving or what it is that you really want, and actually then address that. So there's a few things there, just to get you thinking. And I would be remiss if I didn't say we do need to check for other underlying reasons. Some of these things, there are medical conditions, there are hormonal imbalances, gut infections, SIBO parasites, things like that. They can actually really drive cravings for sugar, literally, because that's what those bugs want to eat. They want sugar. So there are a few other things, and this is where I work with clients, you know, getting blood works done, things like that, to make sure that we have the right strategy for them. There's heaps of natural support things that you can do. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail. I will send out information afterwards. I would say they don't go out and buy a whole bunch of things. Book in a free consult and we can have a chat about it. And food, whole food, essential oils, there are so many different things that can help actually reduce cravings and get you off that sugar roller coaster. So there's a lot of info in that, I realize. Some people will be thinking, oh my God, you know, a little overwhelming. I'll send out some info after so that, you know, you've got reminders and with the replay. And you might be thinking, oh my God, where do I start? Maybe you've tried different things and tried to lose those sugar cravings, but you just haven't been able to kind of make anything stick. So I will try and make that easy for you. First, you can let me be your guide. So this is one option. If you really are ready, you want to ditch cravings, you're ready to take action, I invite you to join me. A few people on here have done this with me before. I personally will guide you step by step through a 21-day metabolism and gut reset. It's all about good food. You will actually have things to substitute while you're trying to kick those sugar cravings. And everything tastes amazing. So your taste buds get satisfied. It actually gives your body basically a chance to reset, and you get back in the driver's seat when it comes to food so that you're not being controlled by cravings. So you get meal plans and recipes, you get daily coaching, you get weekly live group calls with guest presenters as well. It's basically you're going to give your body a gentle detox. You're going to discover the foods that serve you best. Definitely most people will shed some excess weight. You'll lose brain fog, you'll have more energy, and you'll be able to implement a sustainable, healthy routine. So this is not a fad diet. It's not extreme. It's not about pills. It's about basically healthy habits, real food, and some essential oils thrown in that I provide. And just as an aside, there's early bird pricing is still on until the 28th if anybody is interested. Now, the second way that I would love to help out, if you're not sure whether that program's right for you, or you want some more tailored support, book in for a free wellness consult. So that hour really is all about you, and together we can come up with a game plan so that you can achieve your health goals. We can talk about strategies if sugar is your challenge at the moment. And I don't know if you guys remember, but I did promise a free gift. So I think you guys might love this. So it's my healthy sweet treats recipe guide. It's got a few awesome recipes in it that will definitely satisfy your sweet tooth. The link's up there. I will send all of this information out to you, of course, so that it's easy for you to actually click on. And that is it, right at 8 o'clock my time anyway. I will stop sharing so that I can see all of you, if I can find how to do that. I can't actually find my, oh, here we go. All righty, any questions? I realize, sorry, we're right at the hour. Any questions? Thanks, Mel. Anybody got any questions, comments, anything else before we go?
Yeah, thanks, Marsha. That was actually really, really informative. It was fantastic. I'm just wanting some awareness on people that have ADHD are very much prone to enough dopamine. While I'm not diagnosed, I'm certainly up there in that space. Any thoughts in regards to that side of things and the sugar cravings, etc., or what you can do?
I haven't really dived into it too much, but I have had a couple of clients who had ADHD, and it really exacerbates the symptoms. So because people with ADHD don't have as much dopamine produced, what that means is if they find something that generates that same feeling, that pleasure or feeling, then it's far easier for them to get addicted to sweet things. So there's definitely a correlation, but I don't have a lot of the science just on the top of my head about it. It's a great question. So yeah, there's definitely a linkage.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Recommend the 21-day gut reset. Good.
Yes, can't wait. We kick off in what, 2 weeks? I'm hanging out for it. I need it. I like having the accountability and people to play with. That's why I run these programs. So I am very much.
Yeah, definitely.
Helen, Steph, anything from you guys before I close this off?
No, it just reiterates, everything you know that you just need to be reminded about,
Yeah, and it's so easy. We all get into less healthy habits. It's easy for all of us, health nutrition coaches included, which is why we all need to sort of have some accountability and actually get back to basics every so often. All righty, well, if no other questions, I will close this off. I'll send out info and the replay and everything and your little freebie. I'll put a link to that as well. I'll send that out probably tomorrow. So thank you guys for hopping on live.
Thanks, Marsha.
No worries. I will talk to you soon.
Chat to you next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.